How are you, Dee?
Sir, yes, sir. I'm doing great.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
That's it.
Now, which one is that? Because as we know,
That was Rex.
was that clearly Rex? Jim, is that what you recognized?
Yeah, that was Captain Rex.
Okay.
I can
That
tell.
was Captain Rex. But he's been hanging out with Cut LaQuain, so he's kind of loosening up and having some wine, I think.
Awesome, man.
Well,
Wait,
it's great.
you are being celebrated all over the place right now because not with just the return of the Clone Wars, but in particular the Bad Batch arc, which is, I've been calling it sort of a one-man show, those 4 episodes. And I hear rumors that James Arnold Taylor is lobbying to get you an Emmy Award for those episodes. I think that he'd have him build a monument to you if it was up to him.
You know, the only monument I need are the fans that love this show, and to occasionally to bump into them and see how much it means. I mean, in these days of isolation, at least, I get a good taste of that on social media, and it's really gratifying to see how deeply and broadly it touches people. This series, and I mean the harrowing conclusion that we are barreling towards at this very moment, and it's great. It's great that it means a lot to people, to families, to soldiers, to nerds, to kids, to so many people. It's just really wonderful. What could be a better prize? What could be a better monument than that? To make something that means something to people.
But let's go back to your incredible achievement in the Bad Batch arc, and the fact that you lifted those whole episodes and carried them on your shoulder, the whole arc, and those characters all had such distinct personalities, yet we knew they were all cut from the same cloth, and we knew they were all being provided the same voices by a singular voice talent. So tell us a little bit about the evolution of the Bad Batch arc, and how much of it did you record years ago, and how much of it was new dialogue that you were able to go in and record?
Most of the Bad Batch arc is old. Most of the, I tell you what's really, I mean, I love the Bad Batch arc. Just sit down and watch it. It's awesome. It's really one of my favorite arcs. If you just sit down and watch it, it's great. But possibly the most unique thing about it for me is this is the final Clone Wars arc that George Lucas directly had his footprints, his fingerprints on, that he was directly involved with making, and it's fantastic. It's some of the best stuff that he's ever done. I think for television or for movies, and so this is part of it's kind of the end of his direct engagement with the legacy of his creation of Star Wars. So that's a really wonderful thing, and it's doubly wonderful because it's so good. It's so what it needs to be, and I got to give him as well as Dave in particular credit for fulfilling that. I mean, what a wonderful final testament to his genius to be able to put this out. And to have it after all these years, it came back, and Dave loved it, and Disney had the good sense to sign off on that, and they went back in, and we recorded a little bit of it, but most of it was, I'd say about 3/4 of it or so was what we did a few years back before the Clone Wars was finished, when we were already recording into season 7, and we might have even made it into a season 8. Before they, George sold his operation to Disney, and they smashed the pipeline, and we all thought that this would never happen.
Yeah.
But as we've all learned, that a lot comes back in Star Wars. There's a lot of opportunity for things to come back.
How exciting was it for you to learn that the show was coming back? And correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't you the one who broke it to Ashley that the show was going to be coming back? Didn't she say it was on the phone call with you when she learned?
Yeah, the way it played out is, as I remember, is I was actually up with the Star Wars Rebels crew up at Skywalker, and we were kicking around Napa, where I've never been. I'm going to take a sip for Napa right now.
There you go. Where'd you go, to Coppola's place or someplace?
No, we went to this marvelous place called Castilla de Amorosa, the Castle of Love. It's a Tuscan castle, an authentic Tuscan castle, and a winery. And it's got a dungeon, a torture chamber. It's awesome. It's got layers of below the ground. I mean, it's amazing. It's not like a fake tiny castle. It's actually a castle, an authentic castle. Well, anyway, we were walking around there with the Rebels crew, and Dave was with us, along with his beautiful black dog, and I can't remember the black dog's name, but I took a very nice portrait of the two. And Dave pulled me aside, and I said, Dee, I want to tell you something. I was like, okay, Dave, what's up? I think we're going to bring back the Clone Wars. Like, what? You know, like I'm like Jim Carrey in The Mask. You know, my jaw drops and my eyes bug out of my head. And you know, it's like it's all part of the trust tree of silence. You cannot tell anyone. So, of course, immediately I had to text Ashley. Rex had to inform Ahsoka that the Clone Wars is being brought in for a landing.
Just like the loyal soldier he is.
I just couldn't not do it. And you know, as we see, as you're about to see, that the connection of Rex and Ahsoka is very old and very important, and it endures.
Dee, I have to ask, and I'm sure that you've been asked this before, but when you're doing an episode or a series of episodes like The Bad Batch, and you had done a lot of clone crossover throughout the history of the Clone Wars, do you ever lose track as you're recording these lines? You know, oh, that's right. Wait a minute, that's this guy, and he's got a little bit different lift here, or you know, something very subtle there. Do you are you directing yourself in your head throughout that, or do you take it chunk by chunk to avoid things like that?
It's actually a lot easier with the Bad Batch, because it seems like a more remarkable magic trick to make these guys talk to each other, but it's actually because they're more distinct and they're more separated than the typical clones are, that it's actually easier for me to jump from one to the other. Now, if you just watch it, it actually seems more difficult. It seems more impressive. But for me, it's easier. The scary part for me, it's always kind of scary jumping into doing these episodes where it's just me talking to myself, or mostly me talking to myself, is because I really want them to feel different. I want to maintain that the integrity of the characters. Otherwise, the story gets muddled. It gets mushy, and it's just not clear. And I think it really has its emotional impact if these guys all feel different and they all have a different dynamic and they relate to each other, and you think of them as different people. So it's very important to me that maintains, that holds.
What's a
takeaway? The scary part was just launching into it. It's just was just discovering what they would be, because it's just like, well, they're clones, but they're not, and it's like, how do I do that? How do you do this so that there's similarities, but they're different. I mean, it's just terrifying. It's all you. It's like it's like golf or stand-up comedy. There's nowhere to hide. It's all your fault. You know, if it works, then it seems like, hey, you did it. You're the guy. And if it doesn't work, it's like, it's all on you. You completely messed that up, and you cannot point the finger anywhere.
It's true. And so you must have had to really strongly consider each individual character of the Bad Batch, and apply a certain personality to them, a certain voice to them. So maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the influences you tapped in for each character. Like, let's start with Sergeant Hunter. Hunter, the guy who was the leader of the Bad Batch. A lot of people said he, just from looks alone, that he may have been sort of like Charlie Sheen from Top Gun. Was that a conscious thing you guys were leaning toward?
That's a good call. That's a good semblance there. For me, it's more. It's like Snake Plissken, Escape from New York. That's the kind of or even Kurt Russell. It's just kind of a Kurt Russell character.
Kurt Russell.
The Thing or Escape from New York. Just kind of this smoky, mysterious leader of a guy. Kind of understated. Doesn't say all that much, but people kind of follow him. And that's kind of the image that I had in my mind of him, and his voice is probably the most similar to the other to a regular clone, to one of the regs, as they call them.
Yes, I did notice the connection between Hunter and Kurt Russell when Sergeant Hunter revealed that he was a big Elvis Presley fan. So I thought, wow, that's just like Kurt Russell. All right, what about Wrecker? What about Wrecker, who is the big goon of the group, I guess you should call him.
Yeah, he's kind of the incredible Hulk of the group. He's it's interesting because he looks so tough and he's such a big, strong badass of a guy who just loves busting things up and blowing things up. And I think the key that we found is that he's really like a child. He's the most childlike of all of them. He just sort of says whatever he feels, and he repeats what he sees, and he's actually a really straight ahead good guy. I mean, he's not. There's not a lot of clouds in that sky when it comes to Wrecker, and that's part of what's fun about him. That's part of what's he has vulnerability, and he's not that shy about expressing it.
Yeah,
he's scared. Doubt. He's scared of heights and yet he likes to blow things up. I love his final moment there where he's so touched at being able to blow the biggest thing up he's ever blown up in his life. And that, I mean, that's just like, there's something I think that a person can relate to with just this unbridled enthusiasm for busting things up that a little kid has. And very much he's got that. I love him because of that.
Yeah, he was a lovable character, terrifying but lovable. Now, here's a character who I consider your top candidate for the one sitting in the back of the classroom eating a bottle of glue. That would be Crosshair, the sniper. He seemed like he was kind of cut from a different kind of cloth than the other ones. He was somebody who seemed to be more... who would embrace like kind of a gothy sort of vibe, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I dial in and actually, and this takes it far too far, but almost a little Hannibal Lecter.
Yes.
Someone who's very powerful and very calm and very smart and doesn't like messing around. Really doesn't have much of a sense of humor. And is really, really good at the particular thing that he does, and that he kind of hangs his hat on that. And so it's part of the trick of him is to bring this kind of deadly seriousness without making him so much of a jerk that you don't like him. And I think there's enough really cool kind of heroic moments in the Bad Batch arc that he just kind of jumps into action, that you see this guy is a team member and he really gets things done, really super reliable, and so you do like him. He's not like the jerk of the group. He's just kind of sour and humorless, but he really gets things done and is very dependable, and you would want him on your team, actually.
There seemed to be something about him that and I'm really reading between the lines here, but like he would be the type to embrace the morose. He would be someone who would be, like I said, kind of that gothy kind of type. Just hanging out with him in a coffee shop would be kind of weird.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he of all of them have a kind of darkness. I mean, I think it's really speaks to the successful brilliance of how this was conceived and written, which the credit goes to the writer as well as to George Lucas, of course, and Dave, is how different each of these guys are, what a different flavor and attitude that they bring, in this sort of clockwork of cooperation that they bring as a team. That's really fun. I mean, it's really fun. A lighter, more frivolous example is something like Gilligan's Island or SpongeBob, where all of these characters are utterly different and have an utterly different inclination of personality, but because they're all different, they fit together in a way that's really appealing. That really, it's like I like the way this whole thing works together, and I want to see more of it. You know?
Yeah. It's all about the chemistry with these guys that really seem to make them so great.
Chemistry. Yeah.
Now we can't forget Tech, who is sort of the brainiac of the operation. I would say he understood all the technical things that the clones need to do. So what did you tap into to find the voice of Tech?
For him, for me, the adjective for him is breezy, easy and breezy, and just it's all business. And he's a rapidly intelligent problem solver. And he really doesn't. He's almost like someone who's on the spectrum, almost, where he doesn't really play into the emotion or the joke, or the messing around that most people do. He's
definitely
just really
detached.
very straight ahead in a very positive way. Yeah. You know.
What was that, Jason?
I said he's definitely the detached one. It seems like a little bit.
Right. It's in a way he brings the least amount of emotion of the whole group. Not that there's a dead affect to him, but it's just very aloof. It's almost an aloofness that he brings that's interesting.
Yeah, he's so into his intelligent, nerdy interests that his knowledge really motivates him more than the things that are going around him.
Yeah,
I felt like me. Go ahead, Dee.
Yeah, it's his analysis that's utterly competent, and he knows it. But in a way, each of them, they know that each of them there's nobody better at what they do individually. And they may not, they can't do what the others do, but what they do is like this superpower that is so good that it gets them through everything. It is their, and they have no, there's just no hesitation to how they exercise their superpower. And what's brilliant is that they do it together, is that they're able to work that together in such a beautifully coordinated way. That's kind of what's remarkable to me, is like, why do these guys even get along? They're so completely different from each other. And yet they've got this dynamic as a team that you put them together, and it's like, I can't believe what these guys can do. Right. It's like it's a whole army in 4 people. It's really incredible. It's fun. I mean, it's not just incredible or impressive. It's fun. You know, it's great fun.
Well, you're an army in one person. I mean, literally an army in one person. And Dee, after all these years and all these episodes, do you have a favorite clone or a clone or one of the clones that just has a real soft spot in your heart?
Well, I mean, the easiest one for me to say is Rex for so many reasons. And part of that is because of where he started and where he ends up. He started up with much more by the book, you know, telling Ahsoka how to address him and all of this. And then, you know, he crash lands and has, you know, this encounter with Cut LaQuaine. And then he starts to kind of loosen up, and with his time with Anakin Skywalker, I think he sort of loosens up his view of how to problem solve and how to do his job. And that, I think, is a really interesting and accurate human story right there.
And, you know, I think that really becomes obvious, too, in The Bad Batch when we see Rex covering for Anakin while he has a little communication with Padme. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. That was a newer thing that you guys recorded for these episodes.
Yeah, that was a new scene that they added, which was really nice. It actually tied it in the mythology established by the features, which by the way, you got some more of that coming down here in the next 4 episodes.
Ooh, nice.
Which is part of what's really gratifying and satisfying about what's coming down the pike here, but the pike, so to speak. We're done with the pikes now. We're done with the pikes, as far as I know. But I don't know, what were we talking about?
Oh, we were talking about that scene where Rex was covering for Anakin. Yeah.
We've never done a scene like that. It's kind of a comedic scene with Anakin and Rex, and it's like a couple of college guys, one covering for the other. I mean, it was very funny, but it was sweet that it affirmed Anakin's relationship, and I think that was really nice. I mean, in one sense, it was whimsical. In another sense, it sets up the kind of profound emotional connection that he and Padme have, and that adds a really important counterpoint to what's about to unfold, which is profoundly tragic and disturbing and dramatic and operatic. I mean, it's the darkness before the later dawn, and it's just it's very affecting. I mean, it's really very affecting what you're about to see. It is for me anyway.
There are a lot of rumors about the character of Ahsoka and where she is right now, where she might be, and maybe a certain live action series. And those rumors say that maybe Rex is still knocking around with her. What do you think? Do you like to think that as Ahsoka continued on her journey after the events of Rebels, that Rex would have stuck around?
What a wonderful idea. I mean, I can tell you honestly that all that I know is that it sounds like Rex made it to Endor. So at least there's that.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I mean, look, I mean, Ahsoka and Rex, those characters, I think they endure, and I'd like to think, certainly that Ashley and I have some part in that, but a lot of it is the meaning of these characters as brought about by George and Dave and by the writers, where these are the characters that bring about the hope, the seeds of hope that later bear their fruit, right? And so they're really important, and not just to the storytelling, but to the people watching this. Mm-hmm. That these are characters that you can identify with, that are trying to do their best, that are fighting against terrible odds, that experience profound loss, and that yet still are able to salvage hope and to continue going. And it's that kind of hopeful, aspirational narrative that humans need. Perhaps we need that more than ever.
Yeah,
maybe not more than ever, but we could sure use it. I'll put it that way.
One of the things I thought of with Rex and Ahsoka is that they either each one of them would be hard pressed to find someone else that understands perhaps their grief and their feeling of loss over what ends up happening to Anakin.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They're utterly connected in the whole arc of what this magnificent political tragedy that has just played out, as well as the personal tragedy that only later becomes apparent to Ahsoka. I'm not sure. I don't think there's any direct reference that Rex fully grasps what actually happens with Anakin.
Yeah, it's quite possible that he, at least from what we've seen on screen, he doesn't know. Unless Ahsoka would have told him.
Yeah, I mean that's something. I mean, I only know what I've seen.
Right.
And
same with us.
And I don't know anything more than that. But yeah. You're right. I mean, this does offer enticing possibilities to beloved characters that are very interesting, and you still want to see how things play out for them. in the universe of Star Wars that continues to play out. So I think that would be awesome. I think it'd be awesome to see a lot more of both of them, and I'm excited to see Ahsoka in the Mandalorian. That's very exciting.
Absolutely. Now, would you consider an adult Ahsoka to be the same character as the teenager Ahsoka? Because sometimes I have trouble making that connection. I find them to be vastly different characters. And I think that with The Mandalorian, we'll be getting a vastly different Ahsoka from Rosario Dawson. So that's the type of character evolution that could make or break the character, quite honestly. And I think going into that uncharted territory is very exciting, and also it makes me a little nervous. I'll admit it. It does.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting, and I can see the nervousness. But I mean, for me, just personally, I just loved Mandalorian. I think Dave and John and everyone just did such a beautiful job of taking a really imaginative and unique stance towards something new, but that still felt familiar and very much within the world of Star Wars. And so I want to see where they're going to take it, and I'm very optimistic about it, because man, I loved what they did with Mandalorian. It was so fun for me. I was very, very excited about it.
Yeah, like most Star Wars fans, we're big fans of The Mandalorian here as well.
As an old fan, for me, I mean, I'm old enough to get the visual references, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That Dave and John built into The Mandalorian to make it feel, with the way that it was shot and with visual conventions that they utilized that feel, I mean, that go clear back to 1977. That kind of stuff is really fun for me, and just their ability to just to have, like, there's a spaceship landing, and I'm looking at that spaceship thinking, that's a really cool spaceship. I love that ship. That's a really awesome ship. That to me is Star Wars, to see something,
because it's like, so tactile. Like you feel like you can reach out and touch it, which is, you know, something that's missing from a lot of modern films. Dee, take us back real quick to Greeley, Colorado. 15-year-old Dee Bradley Baker, and you're seeing Star Wars for the very first time. Where were you, and what kind of impression did that? I think we know what kind of impression that made, but take us back.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm an old nerd for this. I was so excited about this. I mean, science fiction and monster movies were there was nothing more exciting to me than that. And I read the novelization. I practically memorized the Time magazine feature that they did right before it opened up in '77, and I was completely ready for this. I was so the target audience for this movie.
See, how old were you?
Let me think now. I was born in '62, so I was about, was I 13 or 14 or 2 to 7, 15, maybe I was 15, 14 or 15, somewhere in there. I think I was probably 14.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 14.
Yeah, you were definitely the target audience.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so I went and saw it a few times that summer, and you know, I was beside myself. I just thought this was the most exciting thing I'd ever seen. I was really, really excited. You know, and then my parents, you know, as the story goes, my parents made me a Jawa costume. And then when they re-released it the next summer in '78, the local cinema, the Greeley Mall Cinema, hired me to be a Jawa. Wow. And I was a Jawa all summer, making Jawa sounds and watching Star Wars. I watched Star Wars Episode 4 all summer long. And they paid me in movie passes, which is, that was my first Star Wars gig, actually.
Your first Star Wars gig?
Yeah.
That's great. That's amazing. So fast forward now to 2019. Were you part of the Clone Wars crew that attended the premiere for The Rise of Skywalker?
For The Rise of Skywalker, yeah. Yeah. I brought my oldest daughter to it, and we went and saw it, and there we are at a big premiere of a big Star Wars movie. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Well, I thought it was so cool that they gave you guys the invites for this one, because as far as I know, you guys weren't invited to the previous one. So this one was as a crew, as a Clone Wars crew.
Yeah. I mean, which is all understandable. I mean, you can't get you can't. I've learned this a long time ago. Is you cannot get miffed about what premiere you're asked to, or whatever. It's you really can't. It's not. Right. You can't take it personally. You just can't.
Well, perks are perks, That's not what we're here for. We're here to do some great voices on the Clone Wars in your case. So, but tell us
a very nice gesture.
And what's your review of the film itself, The Rise of Skywalker?
I enjoy all the movies myself, but I mean, for me, I'm kind of an old nerd. So my predilection is, I think the further back you go, the more I like, the more I connect. I'll put it that way, with Star Wars. But a lot of that is just because it especially episode 4, 5, and 6. I mean, those really connected with me from my mid-teens up until late teens or early 20s anyway, and so I think that's why it connects the most with me. Mm-hmm. And then actually the prequels, those connect with me now that I'm a grown-up old man nerd, just because of the grand sort of operatic political palette that George Lucas is painting with. And I think that's a really, I mean, whether or not a person connects with the prequels in a way that person does, say, with the original three, it's a really stunning audacity to try to paint something that is both a personal romance, but also this epic political tragedy that has kind of a perspective on how the world works and how politics work and how democracies fall apart and then try to come back together. I mean, there's so much that's packed into that a lot of people may not be aware of, but that I personally really appreciate. And so that for me is my and then the television shows, just because I suppose partially just because I'm directly involved with them.
Sure.
But they also feel like the old Star Wars to me, especially the television series. And it's the fun, it's the adventure, it's the pace, it's the innovation and the imagination, but also the lightness and the fun of it that I really love. And I just I think that it's wonderful to see that George Lucas was able to come back around and revive that and fulfill it in such a wonderful way that has just exploded since then in such a marvelous way. I'm so gratified to be a part of it. And here we go with the last four. I mean, the final 4 episodes of it.
And all of these episodes are coming up now. These are pretty fresh, right? These aren't leftovers from the old times. This is all fresh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Dave Filoni originally, he had ideas for finishing this off, and that could have gone a lot of different ways, just depending on what his conversation with George that week was.
Right, sure.
But here we are. They've arrived at it, and they signed off on it, and Dave went ahead and made it, and here it is. I mean, we're actually going to bring this dropship into port, and we're going to see it. We're going to see how this ends, and it's something else. I think fans and people who are into Clone Wars and love Clone Wars are going to be very happy with what they see.
Are you saying that because you've seen the episodes, or are you just talking about the script? You have seen them.
Yes, I have.
How did that go down?
Well, it went down with Tracy Canobio dropping that in my screeners app and saying, "Dee, check these out."
Easy enough.
Because I wanted to see them.
I was looking for a far more dramatic and a glamorous tale than just getting an email from a PR person at Lucasfilm.
Well, the illustrious Tracy Canobio, she's a linchpin person. She's marvelous, and she didn't have to do that. They wanted to have a premiere at the El Capitan Theater, where they originally premiered the original Clone Wars.
That's right.
Feature. They were going to do that, but that ain't going to happen now.
Yeah, right. Unfortunately,
this probably would have played out with a grander kind of event had the virus not come upon us.
Yeah.
So, as it was, they were just really nice to kind of drop me a note and let me see it, because I mean, if the virus were not here, I would have flown myself up to Skywalker Ranch and said, "Hey guys, here I am. Can I see it?" Because I want to see it. It's been like a year or two since we recorded it, and I really don't know what it is until I see it. And usually, it often happens, especially with these kind of linchpin episodes or arcs, is that even the main principals don't know what the story is actually finally going to be, because there are secrets that Dave keeps, or little changes and adjustments to the story that can be quite significant that we won't see until it's actually aired. So that's Star Wars.
Right. So, Dee, if Star Wars is forever, it's going to be with us for it's going to be long past us. If you think about let's say a Star Wars podcast 40 years from now, and just think about how you yourself were talking about the impact that the original films had, what would you like the legacy of the Clone Wars, and in particular your contribution as the clones, the one to have given them personality and really tell their story? What would you like that to be?
Ultimately for me, the appeal of Star Wars is one of hope, and that I would wish that people in the future decades from now would say, this is something that gave me hope, or something that gave my dad hope, or my grandpa hope. But this is something that we human beings need, with the change and the disruptions that we increasingly face with the acceleration of the 20th century and the technology and civilization that we've created around ourselves, is that we're disoriented, and we're faced with all kinds of difficulties, both external and internal, and we want something that shows us the way, that sets out a map for how we can deal with this and salvage hope as well as a sense of progress, even when we're at what seems to be the darkest moment. And that, for me, is part of the longevity of George Lucas's genius concept of all of this, is that it provides all of these things, these deep human needs, in an entertaining and fun adventure of a story. So I would hope that it can, and I would expect that it would continue with that legacy. I really do.
For sure. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head, Dee Bradley Baker, DBB, as his friends call him. Hey, listen, and with an answer like that, it just exposes you as totally qualified for this next and final segment of the interview. We have received an email from Yoda himself, and he has sent us a questionnaire to ask any Star Wars fan. They're very simple questions on the surface, but the answers to these questions could be very complex. So, DBB, are you ready for the Yoda Questionnaire?
Yes, Master.
All right.
Okay.
Here we go.
Here we go.
DB squared. What is your favorite, or who is your favorite Star Wars character?
My favorite Star Wars character is the Tauntaun at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back.
All right, this is a very specific answer. You did not hesitate to give us this answer.
Yeah.
So this must be a very well thought out answer. So I can't wait to hear the reasoning behind this.
Look, I'm a creature guy, and I love animals, I love aliens, and I love the surprise of what Star Wars brings me. And I'd already seen A New Hope, countless times dressed as a Jawa, mostly. And so I remember sitting in that theater in Denver, Colorado, when The Empire Strikes Back opened. I remember what it smelled like. It smelled like this really kind of awful, buttery, fake butter popcorn in this gigantic theater on Colorado Boulevard in Denver. And sitting there with my friend, two friends, I think, we're going to see The Empire Strikes Back, which is George Lucas stepping back in and one-upping himself. It's like going from The Godfather to The Godfather 2. It's like, you can't do that again. There's no way. It's like, yep, you did it again. He did it better. and that opening moment where I realized this is actually going to be better than what I just saw a few years ago. And that magical, dawning, awakening moment that I could tell just from that overhead shot of the Phil Tippett animated Tauntaun running over the surface of the ice planet Hoth, that magical moment for me was an unforgettable moment in my life. Mm-hmm. And so I'm choosing the Tauntaun.
Wow. Well, that's a great choice.
I have to say that may be the best answer to that question we've ever been given.
Yeah.
Well,
usually people go, Luke. I'm a Luke guy.
But believe me, I love the human characters as well, or even Yoda or whoever else. But for me, I love what that represents. That Tauntaun.
Yeah, that is so cool. What it
represents. Now, if I do my Tauntaun impersonation, I hope you don't get jealous. Okay, here it is. Not bad, huh?
Yeah, it's like
sounds like cussing under your
Yosemite
breath.
Sam. Yeah.
Rabbit.
Oh God, I just love it. It's like the strangulating kangaroo thing that you cut open its innards and jump inside it. It's like a little sleeping pouch. How awesome is that?
All right, we're going to go on the other side and ask you, can go to the dark side for a minute, and ask you your least favorite Star Wars character. This is the character that if you never saw again, it'd be too soon.
A character that I just don't want to see again? I've never thought of that. I'd have to think about that for a little bit. What character did I not like?
Star Wars character that for just whatever reason you're just like, ugh.
That's a hard question. I don't think I've ever said that where it's like I sure like all the Star Wars movies, but that one character, if I ever see it again, I'm just gonna blow up.
So true.
You never saw a Star Wars character and then just thought, ugh.
Well, I mean, even B. Arthur in the holiday special was like, it's B. Arthur.
Yeah, she's pretty good.
Still B. Arthur. You gave us such a good answer to the first question. I'm going to give you a pass on that one.
How about the Tauntaun guts? Special. How about the Tauntaun guts? Those are that represents the death of your favorite character. I think that could maybe qualify.
Yeah, but that is awesome because it becomes a sleeping bag. It's awesome.
Wait a minute. Do you have that sleeping bag, D? I have to know. Do you have the Tauntaun?
No, I don't. I believe me, I aspire to it. I love that thing. That's awesome.
All right. How about this? Now, this is a great question for a guy like you. You've certainly delivered many of them yourself, but we're going to look at the whole galaxy, the whole universe in totality. What is your favorite Star Wars line? Do you have one?
Well, I have two. I mean, one is the most obvious one, which is the one that rewrites two movies, which is I Am Your Father. And I remember, and what's awesome about that for me is not that everybody says it and everybody remembers it, but because I remember what it felt like when I sat in the theater not knowing what was, as like in the old days, when you didn't know what was going to happen in a movie. And that I had no idea until right before he said it. And right before he said it, I knew that he was going to say it. And it gives me goosebumps now, but it really gave me goosebumps. And it was really exciting. The other line, in a very different way, is it not? I believe it's Padme's line, which thus ends democracy, not to.
Oh, that's how democracy dies, with thunderous applause.
With thunderous applause, yeah. That's a beautiful line. That is a beautiful, timely, insightful line, and that along with Luke, I Am Your Father, are my two. It might be the thus ends democracy line. That might be my favorite Star Wars line because it's just so. It's such an insightful, tragic, and relevant moment.
All right, and what Star Wars scene always makes you smile?
Oh, it's the bar scene, the bar episode 4, walking into the bar. It's like, oh, there's just aliens everywhere, and there's subtitles. I love subtitles. It was so brilliant to have Greedo talking with subtitles. That was so exciting to me. I went home and I started drawing aliens, and I drew my own alien bar scene. I love that.
So, Dee, what'd you think of Star Wars? It was great. It had subtitles. I've never heard that before, but
no, I love subtitles. It's just it all goes back to Greedo for me. But if there could be more subtitles in animation in general, I would be very happy.
Yeah, it's symbolic of great world building. That's for sure. It makes the universe very, very big. Two more questions. We've got one here. What moment in Star Wars makes you sad? So we know which one makes you smile. What one always brings maybe just a little tear to Dee Bradley Baker's eye?
To me, just the most horrifically tragic scene is Obi-Wan and Anakin, and fighting it out, and then Anakin, cutting off his leg. I mean Obi-Wan cutting off Anakin's legs, and I've got the higher ground. I mean that's just a decimatingly ugly, sad, horrible. That really makes me sad. That's terrible. That really disturbs me. I mean, when I started, I'll tell you a story. I was watching episode 3 with my oldest daughter, and I think she was about 11, 10 maybe. And she wanted to watch all the Star Wars movies. Like, okay, hon, let's watch them. Some of like the prequels get a little heavy actually, and so we started into episode 3, and we weren't halfway through it. Where she turned to me and she said, Daddy, I think I want to wait until I'm 12 till I watch this one.
Oh.
And she's never, ever done that with a movie. Wow. Where she said, literally, it's like, I can see that this is not going to go well, that all the good guys are going to go bad, and I don't think I want to handle this as an 11-year-old kid just yet. So, right. Daddy, can we put a pin in this? Oh, and I'm like, yes, we can. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
my son had a similar experience.
Jason had a similar experience.
With Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom with my son just a couple weeks ago, where he said, too much.
7. It's only 7 years old.
No, that one gets. It's like, whoa, God, pull a heart out of a guy's chest.
I got a little ahead of myself. I admit. Not going to win any parenting awards for that. I gotcha.
Let the kids take control of the throttle, and if you want to just slow it or pull it off the side of the road, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. You don't need to see how bad things can get as a grown-up just yet.
Right. All right, Dee, we got one more here for you. This is the most important one, and you have to use your imagination a little bit here. If a new Star Wars movie was to be made, and you were cast in it, and it just happened to be directed by none other than George Lucas, what would you like him to say after he yells cut on your last scene?
I'd like him to say, Dee, don't tell anyone of that one plot point secret that I told you, because you're the only one on the cast who knows it. And if it gets out, I'm not only going to sue you, but I'm going to assassinate you. And so that one scene that's the linchpin scene that only you know about, you have to keep it secret, okay? And I would say, yes, George, that's perfectly fine with me. I will keep that secret.
No, you don't respond at all to George after he says, hey, you do your classic cricket chirping sound. That would show him.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Crickets. That's just what I want to hear, GBB. That's what George would say to you then in response.
Or you might get one of these.
The George laugh.
All right.
Rarely heard.
Dee Bradley Baker, can't thank you enough. It just seems so fitting because we, in a lot of ways, our podcast adventure started with the Clone Wars all those years ago, and it's great to talk to you once again and have you back on the air.
It's my pleasure.
It's really been great. Thank you so much. And we only scratched the surface of your your career as a voiceover talent to just focus on one project. We could probably do many podcasts to get through all of your credits. You have a great website, by the way, at dbaker.com, and many have called it sort of a masterclass for those wanting to get into voice acting. So you've got a lot of great resources on there for people.
Well, dbaker.com, that's my promotional site, but my I want to be a voice actor.com, that's my that deals with voice acting, and I put out all this free information of everything that I've learned about becoming a professional voice actor and a professional artist even. So anybody who's interested in voice acting or acting, I put it all there.
Why is it important for you to be so open about, some, secrets that you might have, some, how should I put it? Some, elements
secrets?
of your craft, trade secrets, elements of your craft. Be so open about that. Why is that important to you to do that?
Well, I mean, here's my reason is that selfishly, I want to work with good people. And the more good people that are out there who get access and find their way in, I want to work with them. And so I want to help those people get in. And it's simply that. And I'm not afraid of competition. I'm not afraid of there being more creative, brilliant people working out there. That actually makes it better. It makes it better for me and for everybody. It makes it better for consumers to have more talented actors out there. And so it's my attempt to get more people more quickly, more frictionlessly, if that's a word. It's not a word.
It is now.
You just made it.
It is now. But to get them quicker to realizing their talents in a professional way, if that is what they are born to do. And if they're not, that's fine. Maybe it's just a hobby. But for me, acting is not a zero-sum game. It's not I win, you lose. It's very much a collaborative game. It's a voluntary family where we are telling a story, and everybody shines. If the whole project works, we're all shining, right? Mm-hmm. So it's my attempt to bring that to a new generation of actors and voice actors. Is just showing the different ways that I've learned from, because I've tried a lot of different kinds of acting and learned in a lot of different manners, and just trying to put it out there and saying there's not one way to do it. There's lots of ways to do it. And here's what I've learned. Here are some other resources of other people who've learned as well. But more so than ever, I mean, certainly when I was a kid, 40 years ago, 50 years ago or whatever, you might be able to find a book somewhere that would show you insight into following the thing that you love. Mm-hmm. But now it's just you can find it. It's all there. And so I wanted to be to provide that resource for aspiring creatives to find if this is something they want to do or if something they just will have fun at. So I hope people get a lot of benefit from it.
Well, the website is iwanttobeavoiceactor.com.
Yes.
And you can also go to dbaker.com and hear things like this.
Swamp.
Yeah. You can't sleep at night, just go over to dbaker.com and you can hear the soft, soulful sounds of night swamp creatures. And by the way, none of that has been digitally altered. That is au naturel. That is all your voice and only
That's all
your
live.
voice. Unbelievable. Wow. So check that out. That's fun just to go through over at dbaker.com. Dee, you're a legend. Thank you so much, my friend. Great
you.
talking to you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks a lot.
It's a lot of fun, you guys. And I'm so happy to do this, and I'm more than anything, I'm just happy for what the fans are about to experience with the final 4 episodes of the Clone Wars. It is the finale that the series deserves.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Can't wait.
All right.
Take care,
May
my
the
friend.
force be with you.
Thanks, Dee, and
As
with
they
you.
say.
As they say. Yes.